Hello everyone, it's me, Aaron, and welcome to another episode of Comic Class, the show on this channel every single week where we just geek out about comic books. And you know, back at the end of April, I said that I was going to make a video giving you my review and my thoughts on all the brand new ResurrXion titles coming out from Marvel. However, then Marvel came in here and interrupted that video by announcing whatever the heck this is. And I've been promising you guys that when I finally got the chance, I would return to this topic. And after all this time, we finally have a week where there isn't some big new release coming out. Nobody's being brought back from the dead. A hero didn't just turn evil. There isn't some giant world colliding event going on this week. So finally, I have a week in which I can talk about all the brand new X-Men and Inhuman books that have been coming out. Now, in case you don't know what the ResurrXion titles are, I'm not going to go into a complete summation of it. I have done that in numerous other videos, but basically, after years of the X-Men going through a giant crisis where the Terrigen Mist almost wiped them off the planet, the X-Men are finally free, they can finally start prospering again, Marvel can finally start putting back out their brand new X-Men titles, and the Inhumans are finally going to stop trying to be X-Men ripoffs. They are finally going to go back to being what made them unique in the first place. So, we have gotten a ton of new X-Men and Inhuman titles trying to accomplish these goals. Do they succeed? Honestly, I think for the most part they do. And today we are going to be looking at all the brand new X-Men titles that have come out. We've got 5 titles to go through, and next week I'm going to cover all the new Inhuman books that have come out. And I know that most of you guys are only interested in the X-Men books, but I will just say, to go ahead and spoil something from next week's episode, make sure you come back for the Inhumans episode too, because there is one book in there that I am really excited to talk about, and have probably enjoyed more than any of these titles. Not to say that I haven't been enjoying the X-Men books as well, but well, you'll see next week. But alright, let's start with the 2 main X-Men titles that have come out. They have returned to the old classic formula of having 2 different X-Men teams, X-Men Gold and X-Men Blue. Now, X-Men Gold is the main X-Men team, which that's the first thing that I have to talk about. I am so glad that I now actually have a main X-Men book. I have had so many people come into my store since ResurrXion started up, and they have had one simple question: what's the X-Men book to read? If I just want to know about the X-Men, not this X-Men side story, not this special themed X-Men team, not this special mission for these X-Men, if I just want to know the X-Men, what's the book I read? That would be X-Men Gold. And I'm so glad that I can now actually point to that book and go, that is the X-Men. That is the book that is all about the school. It's about Kitty Pryde and the main X-Men team running that school, teaching these students, trying to save a world that hates and fears them, taking on evil mutants. Yeah, man, it is an X-Men book, and that's the number one thing that I have to applaud about this series. It feels like an X-Men book. In the X-Men Prime issue that came out, Kitty Pryde said, listen, the X-Men over the past couple years, we've been rudderless. We have not had a direction. And when I read that, I almost wanted to stand up and applaud, because that's not Kitty Pryde saying that. That's the fandom saying that. That's the editors over at Marvel saying that. That was that moment, kind of like in DC Rebirth, where I said that Jeff Johns kind of subtly apologized for the New 52 in there, and that made me trust Rebirth a lot more than I probably would have. That's what this did for the X-Men. When Kitty Pryde came in here and said the X-Men have been rudderless over the past couple of years, I just sat there and went, oh my gosh, they get it. They get that the X-Men have had no idea what they've been doing over the past couple of years, and that is the number one thing I can say about X-Men Gold. I read that book, and I go, it's the X-Men being the X-Men. There's a scene in the first issue where they're playing baseball, and Old Man Logan is sitting there saying, you know what? We need this. We need baseball, because it feels familiar. It feels like the team. It feels like family. It feels like us coming together. I was like, that's it. That's what the X-Men need. And don't get me wrong, I'm not saying you can't come in here and do something different with the team. I'm not saying that you can't eventually have these characters grow and go in different directions and become something unique. But the X-Men have kind of just gone in a direction where I don't even know what they are. Like, if you want me to explain to you what the X-Men have been over the past couple of years, I wouldn't exactly know how to sum it up. I mean, I could explain it to you, but I couldn't really sum it up. I would have to give you a detailed description of it, and by the end of it all, I would still just be like, yeah, so they're just trying to survive, they're just doing their own thing. In this book, the X-Men protecting a world that hates and fears them from evil mutants. In fact, at the end of the first issue, when they go to save the day, and I was like, oh, who's the mystery villain gonna be? And it turns out it's the Brotherhood of Evil Mutants. I went, oh my gosh, I never thought we would ever even see those guys again. And don't get me wrong, it's not like they're just throwing out there the Brotherhood of Evil Mutants. There was indeed a big twist with them. There is a big mystery behind them that is going to play out over the next couple issues. So again, they are doing something different with it, but it was a classic X-Men villain. And we did have a classic X-Men team going in there, in their classic X-Men ship, and they are living at the classic X-Men mansion. Again, not saying that you can't progress them and do something different with them. In fact, I'll be totally honest with you, I'm kind of a little bit miffed that they're now calling it the Xavier Institute again. I preferred it when it was the Jean Grey Institute. I kind of wish that they would go ahead and return to that, because it was a great way of showing how these characters have progressed and changed. But it did kind of just feel like coming home. It felt like someone was writing the X-Men who was just a big old X-Men fan, and they just wanted to write X-Men books. And after so many years of the X-Men being down in the dumps, yeah, it kind of felt nice to have that. That being said, the book itself is just okay. Like I said, if you are a giant X-Men fan and you just want to read about the X-Men, X-Men Gold will feel like you are reading about the X-Men. But if you've never really gotten into the X-Men and you've always been like, you know what, is this the perfect time for me to start reading the X-Men? In a way, yes, because when you pick up this issue, you are going to now realize what the X-Men are. You are going to get that flavor of the X-Men in there. But it's not the best X-Men I've ever read. It's not even the best X-Men book out there right now. It's just okay. All the writing, all the dialogue, all the character work, all the interactions between these characters, it's fine. It's totally fine. That's about it. I mean, yeah, I can't really criticize anything. I can't really point at anything and go, oh, that was bad. But I can't really point at anything and go, oh, that's good either. It's just very okay. I mean, there is stuff in there that I like. I am enjoying Kitty Pryde running the school, and Old Man Logan does get a classic Wolverine badass moment at the end of the second issue that I actually really enjoyed. But aside from that, there's nothing really that I can point to and go, this is being done exceptionally well. Next up is XMen Blue, and this is the one that I've seen most people calling the best of the X-Men books out there, which I will be totally honest with you, I do not mean to insult this writer at all, but I was kind of surprised to hear that coming from a book being written by Cullen Bunn. Not that there's anything wrong with Cullen Bunn, but kind of like X-Men Gold, he is very much just okay. Cullen Bunn is one of the hardest working writers out there. He is a guy who knows how to hit a deadline. That dude at all times is doing like 7 different books. He has an insane number of titles on his resume, but almost all of them are just kind of okay. He's got some books out there like Horror County or his previous Magneto series that I thought were actually really darn good. But aside from that, the vast majority of the stuff he writes, not bad, just okay. It's fine. And he puts it out on time, so I gotta give him that. But that being said, honestly, I have to agree with everyone. As of right now, I do think this is the best of the X-Men books out there. And partly because it's not afraid to A, pay tribute to the old classic X-Men stuff, kind of like X-Men Gold is, but at the same time, it's not afraid to go in completely different directions. Because you see, for the past 5 or 6 years, the original X-Men team has been trapped from the past in our present, and they've been trying to find a way to go back home. However, in the previous all-new X-Men series, they discovered at the end of that they actually were not the X-Men from the past. They did find a way to go back to the past, and when they went back to the past, they saw the original X-Men there. They were not them. They had not been stolen from the timeline. They had been stolen from an alternate dimension. And now that they know that, they realize, oh, our home world is not being protected by the X-Men. There is a dimension out there that does not have the X-Men. We need to find a way to go home. So already I love this idea, partly because I was getting so fed up with the original X-Men being here because we all knew if they were from the past, eventually they would have to return to their own timeline. However, they have now been here for so long and undergone so many different changes, there is no way they could possibly ever return to their own timeline. But now, saying that they're from an alternate dimension, it explains why they could go back and not screw up the timeline. It also gives them more of a reason to go back, because if they go back, they will be able to protect their own home universe. Their home universe is now vulnerable. They need to get back there. And it takes away the big reason they had for not returning. They did not want to return because they had seen how screwed up they would become if they went back there and became the X-Men of the present. Well, now that they know they're from an alternate reality, that's not necessarily going to happen. They know they can actually write their own future. They just have to get back to their home dimension. However, that's all stuff that got explained in the previous all-new X-Men series. Now they're in the XMen Blue series, and a lot has changed. Now they're actually working with Magneto because Magneto has decided, you know what, I realize we have to be able to work side by side with the humans, and part of that means we have to eliminate all the evil mutant threats out there. Humans will never trust us if there are all these evil mutant threats. So while you have the X-Men Gold team out there running the school and being more the classic team, the X-Men Blue team is more proactive. They're actually searching out all the big mutant baddies out there and going out there and trying to stop them. In the first issue, they actually take on Black Tom and the Juggernaut, and man, it just felt good to see the X-Men going up against the Juggernaut again. Again, kind of like how X-Men Gold is a big rush of nostalgia, this again was a giant rush of nostalgia. However, I gotta say, I think this was handled a little bit better. And as I mentioned, part of the appeal of the X-Men Blue team is that they actually are not afraid to do different stuff. And that's what I love about this idea of the original X-Men now being from an alternate reality. Because since they are from an alternate reality, they don't have to obey all the rules that the previous team followed. For example, Jean Grey is now the leader of the team, and I love that because if you look back at the old X-Men books, Jean Grey, you know, she was there, but she was kind of always being protected by the other members, and they actually do address that. They actually do have her come in here and say, you guys have to stop trying to save me, you have to follow my orders. If I'm going to lead this team, I can't be the damsel in distress. You have to do what I say, and if I tell you I've got this, don't come rushing in here disobeying all my orders to try and protect me. So I actually did really enjoy seeing that brand new dynamic thrown to the team. And the big twist is that in the previous all-new X-Men series, when Beast was trying to figure out a way to go back in the past, he said, listen, I have studied every form of science that I can in order to find a way back to the past. It's time for me to study the unknown. I have to turn to magic to try and find a way back home. And he did. And they are continuing that in this current X-Men Blue series because the Beast, yeah, he's still all about science, but he's actually really getting into magic. He actually now carries a couple of magical items with him into battle that he does use against his opponents. And I love that Scott isn't really okay with that because the Beast is doing some dark magic stuff and he doesn't seem to have a problem doing it. And Scott is looking at him like, you're going down a dark path here, which actually is causing me to form all kinds of crazy theories. It's like, oh shoot, does this mean that the alternate reality that they're from is actually the evil dark future reality that we saw where the Beast turns evil back in Grant Morrison's run? I don't know, that's a crazy theory that I've started to develop, but as I said, I really am enjoying seeing how different they're willing to make this original team, how much they're willing to experiment with it, because they realize, since it's now an alternate reality, we actually can change these characters. We do not have to obey the exact same rules. So this one, I think, is being the most successful in that department of paying tribute to the old books, but at the same time, not being afraid to journey into something new. Speaking of these original X-Men, Jean Grey now has her own title as well, and it's being written by Dennis Hopeless, and that caused me to have high expectations for this book because he's just coming off of the Spider-Woman series, and that for the past year has been one of my favorite books at Marvel. So I was like, alright, you made me care about Jessica Drew, a character I never cared about before, so let's see what you can do with Jean Grey. And first issue, it's not bad, but it suffers from one major problem, and I'm really hoping that the editors will come in here and give Dennis Hopeless a few notes on this, which is just simply that Dennis Hopeless is trying way too hard to create millennial speak. I'm sorry, there's probably a better word for it, but you guys know what I'm talking about. It's whenever an older writer, which I'm not saying that Dennis Hopeless is old, but it's whenever an older person tries to capture the voice of a teenage character, so they throw in there a whole lot of slang that they probably saw online and saw that, hey, this is what the young hip kids are saying. I was reading that going, this does not feel natural. It feels really forced. Because maybe it's just me thinking about the older Jean Grey, because that's why I have more experience reading, but I just think about the Jean Grey that I always read, and I was like, I don't really see her using all the hip young kid lingo out there. But aside from that, I do think that there was a lot in here that I really did enjoy. I think that aside from just the way that she spoke, I think that Dennis Hopeless did capture Jean Grey's mindset, just the way that she was thinking and the stuff that she was dealing with at the moment. And they are definitely swinging for the fences. I gotta give them that. They're not coming in here and going, well, you know, it's Jean Grey, we're just gonna have her, you know, deal with life. Just try to figure some things out. Nope, spoiler for the first issue, the Phoenix is returning. If you guys have been reading the current Thor series, you know that the Phoenix has come back to life. It has risen again from the ashes, and at the end of the most recent Thor storyline, it makes a beeline straight for Earth, going, there's someone here I need to find. Jean has gotten psychic warnings that the Phoenix is on its way back to Earth and it's looking to possess her. So, hey man, I will always applaud any book out there that really does try to do something big. That doesn't just sit back and go, you know what, we're just gonna kind of chill. We're just gonna do a slice of life book with this really big, powerful superhero. No, I love a book that is not afraid to do something giant. This book is doing something giant. Next up is Weapon X. Now, this is the one that's been getting the worst ratings from other critics out there, and I can understand it. Partly because it's being drawn by Greg Land, and I have noticed that anytime that Greg Land draws a book, the ratings for that book always drop way lower than if he was not drawing it. I'm not kidding you. Look at books like Mighty Avengers or Spider-Woman. The moment that he got off those books, the ratings for them went way up. They improved almost overnight, so I fully understand that a lot of critics out there just have a problem with Greg Land and they can't get beyond that, and it does hurt the books. Heck, I have a problem with Greg Land, and sometimes it does hurt the books, but it's not that bad in here. In fact, in issues 2 and 3, he's barely even drawing anything in there. They're bringing in other artists to fill out about half the issue, so it's not that big of a problem for me. But aside from that, I can still see why this one isn't getting that many good reviews. I mean, it's a book about Weapon X. It's about the deadliest mutants in the Marvel Universe being hunted down by this evil, dark organization. And yet the book is really fun. It's really kind of upbeat and poppy and happy. I mean, most of the series so far has been Old Man Logan and Sabretooth just kind of messing with each other. It's almost like a Midnight Run situation where they basically just have to travel together and they hate each other's guts and they're constantly just ribbing at each other. They don't actually fight, they just kind of make fun of each other. Or for another example, when you actually see the Weapon X people, it's a bunch of average Joes just talking about their daily life and just the errands they have to run when they're not trying to hunt down mutants. So I can understand critics having a problem with this book. I can understand critics reading this book going, this is way too fun and upbeat for a Weapon X book. However, man, I can't lie, this is my big guilty pleasure over at Marvel at the moment. Because yes, it's got problems. I see those problems. And the tone of this book does not match what a Weapon X book should be at all. However, yeah, when I see those people at Weapon X talking about, oh, I gotta go and pick up my kids at school right now while they're hunting down mutants, I'm like, that actually adds an interesting dimension and actually makes these evil villains kind of human. And when I see Wolverine just ribbing at and poking at Sabretooth, and Sabretooth can't get him back because Old Man Logan is just too old to care and fall for Sabretooth's old stuff, I can't lie to you, I kind of love that. It actually brings a big old smile to my face when I see these two just jabbing at each other. I mean, there's a moment in which Wolverine tricks Sabretooth into admitting that he's got a Match.com profile. I know that a lot of Sabretooth fans out there are going to hear that and go, oh, they wrecked this character. I don't care. I actually smiled at that. I had a good time with it. So, is this book what a Weapon X book should be? Not really. Is it still a fun time? Am I still enjoying reading it? Yeah, I can't lie to you. I actually really do enjoy this book. It's got problems. I'm not going to blame anybody out there for not liking it. But, hey man, this is my guilty pleasure right now. But alright, let's get into the final X-Men book, which is Generation X. Now, the first thing that I have to say is that despite the fact that it's called Generation X, this book doesn't really have any connection to the previous Generation X book, other than the fact that it features Jubilee and Chamber. Aside from that, this book is meant to be the current New Mutants, Generation X, Young X-Men, New X-Men hybrid book. Like, every single generation of X-Men books always has that one book that focuses on the students at the school. It focuses on the young mutants who are learning how to become the next generation of X-Men out there, and that's what this book is meant to be. However, so far, after only one issue, we don't really see them as a team. They are more just students. And that's kind of interesting because all those other books that I just mentioned that this is meant to be carrying on the legacy of, they were team members. They were a team coming together. In every single other one of those books that I just mentioned, it was about a specific team coming together. In this one, yeah, it is a team that's coming together, but after the first issue, it's more just about the students. It is, like I said when I was talking about the Jean Grey book, more of just a slice of life book so far. Don't get me wrong, they are doing stuff. This does focus on the pressure that Jubilee is going through in not only being a mother, but also having to return to the Xavier school, and now she's in a teaching role, which is a brand new role for her. So that's kind of interesting. I am enjoying seeing where that's going. And also at the end of the issue, some villains do pop up, so you do know that these students are going to have to come together and work together. But everything leading into that, it's more of just the interactions that these students have. It's about a new student, he's coming to school, he's getting to know them, all these characters are interacting with each other, they're all kind of being brought together. Quentin Quire is doing something interesting where he's now helping to fund the school, which I actually think is kind of interesting and you can do a lot with that. But at the moment, the book isn't bad, but it's not really great either. It's all kind of set up, which sadly, that's what a lot of #1 issues are. They are just kind of like, okay, here are the characters. Next issue is when we actually start getting into the story, and I can tell that's kind of what the Generation X book is going to be. The Generation X book, issue 1, here are the characters. That's all this was. But when you have that many characters to go through, that's kind of all you can do in just 21 pages. So I can't really point a finger at this book and blame it for that. But it is one of those books where I'm going to have to wait and see. I am going to have to return for issue 2 when the story actually kicks into gear and we actually see what this is going to be about. Alright everyone, that's it for part 1 of our look at all the new X-Men and Inhuman books. Come back next week in which we're going to be taking a look at the Inhuman books, and I will just say, kind of in conclusion, talking about these X-Men titles, are they all great? No. Most of them have just kind of been okay. However, that's not the job of these books. The job of these books are not to knock my socks off and make me go, oh my gosh, these are amazing. The job of these books are to make me excited for the X-Men. The job of these books are to remind me of what the X-Men were, of what worked for those X-Men, and what made me want to read them in the first place, and to introduce a whole new generation of readers to that same thing. And I gotta say, looking at it like that, I actually think this is succeeding pretty darn well. Yes, I have read far better X-Men books out there. Yes, none of these books I would say are an A+. They're all about a B, B-, B+ at the most. However, they're all capturing the spirit of the X-Men. When I want to tell someone what the X-Men are, I can now point to these books and go, that is what the X-Men are. If you want to read about the X-Men, congratulations. I no longer have to search back for a trade that existed 10 years ago in order to show you what the X-Men are. I can pick up a brand new issue off my wall and hand it to you and go, this right here is what the X-Men are. That is what the whole point of ResurrXion was, and they're actually succeeding with it. I gotta say, I think that they are actually capturing that very well. So let me know what you thought of these titles in the comments down below. And remember, next week we're going to be taking a look at those new Inhuman titles, so make sure that you come back for that. And if you like this video, make sure that you share it around the web, and also you can follow me on Twitter, Twitch, and Tumblr at Professor Thorgy. Thanks so much for tuning in, everyone. Come back next time.